Hello, this is One Drop Flood, a deck I've been modifying and tinkering with for the past week or two after set 3 came out. And it's been a lot of fun, and I think I've optimized it to a really good point, and I don't think the deck's going to change much after this, so I thought I would re-record my explanation video to make it a little bit more straightforward and succinct. So, what is this deck? This deck is a combo deck that is extremely aggressive, and the main combo relies on 4 cards. One, we're going to be using the new card, the Pride Lands. The Pride Lands will give characters their +2 willpower, which can be useful, but the main reason why we have it is if you have a prince or a king here, it's going to make all your characters cost 1 less. And we have, of course, a prince. The best one would be Simba. He's a prince, and also his ability is going to be really useful. We'll get into that more later. But we're also running 2 of the 2-cost Simbas, which would also work. So if you have Pride Lands out, and you have a Simba at it, and you have a Rockstar Stitch, which says whenever you play a character that costs 2 or less, you may exert and draw a card. This can make a pseudo-infinite combo if you have a lot of 1-cost characters in your deck. And as you can see, we're running, it looks like 36 1-cost characters, all of these. And so the idea is you have a Simba out, you have a Pride Lands out, you probably have a Stitch New Dog out, you shift in the Rockstar Stitch, and then you just start playing your entire deck. You play a 1-drop, you exert it with Stitch's ability, which draws you a card. The 1-drop that you just played was free. You play another 1-drop, play another 1-drop, play another 1-drop, etc. Eventually, to sweeten the deal and really make it so that way you can play your entire deck, is you find in a whole new world, you sing that with Stitch during your combo turn, which will ditch your hand, which is probably at 2 or 1 cards at that point, and get a whole new hand, and you just keep going. And any single 1 card in your hand can keep being played until you run into a card that is a character that costs more than 1, or that is a song that you can't sing, or like a Pride Lands. So having 1 or 2 cards in your hand whenever you start doing the combo lets you go for a bit, but having 7 cards in your hand before you do the combo after you do a whole new world means you can basically keep going. The really nice thing is that whenever you play Simba Future King, or whenever you play Cinderella, you draw a card because you exerted it with Stitch, and then you draw a second card from their ability, and then you can discard a card from your hand. Usually you can discard the bricks, like whenever you draw a Pride Lands or a Bare Necessities or another whole new world that end up clogging up your hand and not letting you continue your combo forever. I've played a lot of games with it, and I think the most consistent way to get the combo off is turn 5. I don't know exact stats, but let's say you play 20 games, you're probably going to get the combo off on turn 5 on 16 out of those 20 games. On 2 of those games, you're going to get the combo off on turn 4, and on 2 of those games, you're either going to get the combo off on turn 6 or just lose because you can't do the combo. Of course, you also may have some games where you don't get the combo off because they'll kill your Rockstar Stitch. We can kind of get more into that later. But the order of the turns would be in a normal combo when you're trying to get it off on turn 5. On turn 3, you would play a Stitch New Dog, and you would play a Prince, either the 2-cost or 3-cost Prince. On turn 4, you would shift in Rockstar Stitch, and then on turn 5, you would play Pride Lands. You would move your Prince to Pride Lands, and then play the rest of your deck. You can do it 1 turn earlier on turn 4. Call this a Pluto combo. It requires Pluto in order to do, but you would play Simba, the 1-drop on turn 1. Your first 2 turns can kind of be done in the order, but let's say you play a Simba on turn 1. Turn 2, you play a Pluto, Friendly Pooch, and a Stitch New Dog. On turn 3, you can use Good Dog from Pluto Friendly Pooch to pay 1 less to let you shift in your Rockstar Stitch. And then on turn 4, as you've probably guessed, you play the Pride Lands, you move your Simba to the Pride Lands, and then play a whole new world and do your whole shenanigans that we talked about before. Alternative way to do the turn 4 combo would be to have your you can play a Pride Lands on turn 2. This is a bit risky, especially with any of the Mim Foxes or anything else that can kill your Pride Lands after you've exposed it on turn 2. But sometimes you fight decks that are going really slowly or don't have any rush, and you don't need to worry about that as much. But you could play a Pride Lands on turn 2. You can then play a Simba Future King on turn 3 and move it to the Pride Lands. And then on turn 4, well, also on turn 3, you can play your Stitch New Dog because now it costs nothing. And then on turn 4, you would shift in the Stitch Rockstar and then play your whole deck. So when you're playing your whole deck and after you've played a whole new world, you can keep drawing cards. The most important thing that you want to find, because you just gave your opponent 7 cards, is you're trying to find one of the bare necessities that are in the deck. There's only 2 of these because it's all you really need. It sucks if you have to ink it or get rid of it in the beginning, which is why there's a second one for redundancy. But you will draw your whole deck, so you will eventually find the bare necessities. You then should hopefully either have your 2-cost Simba or your 2-cost Cinderella out in play that you had from turn 2, or if you have a 1-cost Cinderella that can sing this. So during your combo turn, after you've drawn and played your whole deck, you play the bare necessities to check your opponent's hand and remove anything that would make you unhappy, like swords or something like that. Be prepared if you're fighting red. So that's about it. Some tips. I know it may be tempting to the turn you play Rockstar Stitch on turn 4 to exert it to quest or to immediately sing a whole new world. It's unnecessary to do that. You can in my opinion, you just hold off on exerting Stitch. You hold off on questing aggressively with any of your characters, unless you know for sure that they can't kill it. For instance, they can't play a rush creature and attack it, because you're not really needing any lore before turn 4, turn 5, because you're going to play 20 characters in a single turn and win on turn 6. You can also, some other things, like I'm not running Lilo in this deck. She would quest for 2, but it doesn't really help the game plan. You'd rather be putting cards in your deck that are inkable. I've even thought about removing Pluto, but there's some times when Pluto can be useful, especially on future turns after the combo turn, that make him good enough to keep in and doesn't hurt the consistency too much. The worst matchup is against Amber Steel, especially an Amber Steel deck that sings a lot of songs. And then Along Came Zeus is probably the hardest counter because it'll kill Stitch. If you think you're going against Then Along Came Zeus, you can try playing the Pride Lands first, but even then, the Pride Lands first will only survive with 2 health after Then Along Came Zeus. And if they have anything in play that has 2 or more power, it's going to kill this Pride Lands. So that, if you can find that card and discard it with bare necessities ahead of time, that's pretty great. But honestly, sometimes you just take the L against Amber Steel and you're just happy that you're doing pretty well against the other matchups. I think most importantly against Ruby Amethyst, this deck seems to do pretty well. There's nothing they can really do before turn 6 that is notably bad. I think you have a Prince Eric that could maybe kill it, the Stitch, if you use Teeth and Ambitions, but other than that, most of the things they do would be with Foxes and exerting your characters with Pinocchio and stuff like that. So definitely don't play your location first if you're going against purple or anything that can rush really easily. You also want to keep track of how many cards in your deck. You're going to be playing everything. If you're going against Steel, note that they could probably mill you. So you want to stop at either 8 cards in your deck or at 15 cards in your deck. So that way they can't kill you by playing 1 whole new world, or if you suspect them, being able to play 2 whole new worlds. Definitely bare necessities as soon as possible after you've played your combo and given them a new hand, just to figure out what kind of situation you need to avoid. You also need to just make sure that you don't self-mill yourself. Obviously, in person, when playing it physically, it's a little bit easier to keep track of it, but you may kind of get out of hand whenever you're playing it on Pixelborn, so keep that in mind. You also want to make sure that when you're playing, you just kind of keep track of how much lore you need to get. So you're going to want to get to like, I can quest for about 25-ish, and okay, they can remove, up to 5 lore from my questing ability and still be able to win. Some specific numbers that I have in the deck, like I already mentioned, you only really need 1 Bare Necessities, but I'm afraid to get rid of that 1 Bare Necessities early on in the game and not find the second one, so redundancy of 2 Bare Necessities I think is good. 4 Beer Guess is great because it helps you find your combo pieces when you need it. 4 Whole New Worlds because it's really great to hit Whole New World when you start your combo. Cinderella's, whenever you're doing your combo, can brick your combo, but her consistency is great. She can sing on turn 3 after you play her on turn 2. She helps filter your cards. She's a fantastic card. Maybe wondering why there's only 2 Simba Protective Cubs instead of 4. I'm debating going even lower than 2 because he doesn't provide much value after you get your combo going, but you definitely need to get your princes. So I started with 4, but I ended up just bricking more often with Simba than he was useful, so brought him down to 2. If you would like, you can try experimenting with 2 or less, or change that number however you'd like. Also, feel free to change how many bare necessities there are if you think you need more or less. I obviously think I need 4 Pride Lands. Basically, all the combo pieces, I want as many as possible. I have thought about running Chernobog in this deck. I think at most I would run like 1 Chernobog. I think 2 would just be too much, too unnecessary. But if you think about it logically, the reason why you'd be playing Chernobog is if they've played a board clear to kill all your stuff. Um, Be Prepared isn't going to come online fast enough to do anything about it. So the realistically only board clear that you're worried about would be um, Grab Your Swords, because like a big Tinkerbell isn't enough to kill our stuff. And of course, like Grab Your Swords with Big Tinkerbell is enough, but realistically, as long as you get rid of the Grab Your Swords, then that problem goes away. And we're going to be getting rid of their Grab Your Swords with Bare Necessities. Usually decks don't run more than 2. If they run 4, like I guess, oh well. But let's say um, in a situation where they've killed all your stuff, you can say, hey, I'll play Chernobog, put everything back in my deck so I don't run out of cards. I've just found the inconsistency of Chernobog not to be worth it, and I never lose because I run out of cards. I almost always lose because I was not able to sing Bare Necessities or something like that, or I weren't able to play Bare Necessities, or they've just killed Stitch ahead of time, so I opted not to play it. But maybe I'm wrong. You can test it out and tell me if you think that Chernobog is great, or maybe you played some games where Chernobog won you the game. Let me know. That sounds awesome. But this deck, I think it's worth not running. And that's about it. 12 Uninkables and a whole lot of fun. If you want, in the comments, or rather in the information down below, you can see a couple of practice games or sample games that I played, and I kind of show it off in action. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. The deck's relatively cheap because most of the stuff are commons that cost like 5 cents, so basically anyone can play it. See you next time.